There is a place on Earth where the sun is so powerful, so relentless, and so consistent that it delivers more energy to a single square kilometer of ground in one day than a coal power plant produces in an entire year. It covers 3.5 million square miles. It receives more solar radiation than any other landmass on the planet, and almost none of it is being used. The Sahara Desert, the largest hot desert on Earth, stretches across 11 countries, from the Atlantic coast of Mauritania to the Red Sea shores of Sudan. For thousands of years, it has been considered one of the most hostile, most empty, most useless places on the planet. But engineers and scientists have been doing the math, and the numbers are almost impossible to believe. If you covered just 1% of the Sahara Desert with solar panels, 1% of a desert that most people consider worthless wasteland, you could generate enough electricity to power the entire world. Not a city, not a country, not a continent, the entire world. This is not a fantasy. This is not a fringe theory. The physics are settled. The technology exists. The resource is already there, waiting. So why hasn't it been built? And what would actually happen if it were? To understand what makes the Sahara so extraordinary as an energy source, you first have to understand what the sun actually delivers there. Solar irradiance, the measure of how much solar energy hits a given surface area, varies dramatically across the Earth. In Northern Europe, cloud cover, low sun angles, and seasonal variation means solar panels operate at perhaps 10 to 15% of their theoretical maximum for most of the year. In the Sahara, the story is completely different. The desert sits between roughly 15 and 35 degrees north latitude, the ideal band for solar energy collection. The skies are almost perpetually clear. The sun angle is high for most of the year. Humidity is near zero. There are no clouds, no trees, no mountains blocking the light. The average solar irradiance in the central Sahara is approximately 2,500 kilowatt-hours per square meter per year. That is roughly double what you would receive in Germany, currently one of the world's leading solar energy producers. And the Sahara covers 9.2 million square kilometers. The total solar energy falling on the Sahara every year is approximately 22 billion terawatt-hours. The entire world's current energy consumption for electricity, heating, transportation, industry, everything, is approximately 580 terawatt-hours per year. The Sahara receives almost 38,000 times more solar energy than the world currently uses. The resource is not the problem. Two primary technologies have been proposed for harnessing Saharan solar energy at scale. The first is photovoltaic solar, the technology most people are familiar with. Silicon-based panels that convert sunlight directly into electricity. Reliable, increasingly cheap, and scalable to any size. The second is concentrating solar power, CSP. Instead of converting sunlight directly to electricity, CSP systems use mirrors to focus sunlight onto a central receiver, generating intense heat that drives a turbine. The key advantage of CSP over photovoltaic is thermal storage. The heat can be stored in molten salt tanks and used to generate electricity hours after the sun has set. In the Sahara, where the sun is available for 10 to 12 hours per day at high intensity, a CSP plant with thermal storage can potentially operate around the clock, generating electricity continuously, not just when the sun is shining. The combination of these two technologies, photovoltaic for maximum daytime output, CSP with storage for continuous round-the-clock generation, forms the theoretical backbone of a Saharan solar megaproject. The cost of both technologies has fallen dramatically. Solar photovoltaic costs have dropped by over 90% since 2010. CSP costs have fallen by more than 50% in the same period. Both continue to fall. The technology is not the problem either. In 2009, a consortium of European companies, banks, engineering firms, insurance companies, technology companies, came together with an idea that captured the imagination of the entire renewable energy world. They called it Desert Tech. The plan was straightforward in concept and staggering in scale. build a network of concentrating solar power plants across North Africa and the Middle East. Connect them with a new high-voltage direct current (HVDC) transmission grid that would carry electricity from the Sahara northward through undersea cables beneath the Mediterranean Sea into the European power grid. North Africa would get clean energy. Europe would get clean energy. The desert countries would get investment, jobs, and a new economic foundation beyond oil. The initial investment estimate, €400 billion over 40 years. The projected output, enough to supply 15% of Europe's electricity by 2050. At its peak, the Desertec Industrial Initiative had over 50 major corporate members. It received serious attention from governments across Europe and North Africa. It generated more media coverage and investor interest than almost any energy project in history. And then, slowly, it fell apart. Political instability in North Africa following the Arab Spring of 2011 frightened investors. European governments, under economic pressure from the 2008 financial crisis, pulled back commitments. North African governments grew concerned about sovereignty, about their countries becoming energy colonies supplying power to wealthy European nations while receiving relatively little in return. By 2014, most of the major corporate backers had withdrawn. Desertec, as originally conceived, was effectively dead. But the idea and the math behind it never went away. The single greatest technical challenge in building a Saharan solar megaproject is not generating the electricity. It is moving it. The Sahara is not next door to the places that need the power most. Europe's major population centers, London, Paris, Berlin, Rome, are thousands of kilometers from the heart of the Sahara. Moving electricity over those distances requires transmission infrastructure that doesn't yet exist at the required scale. Standard alternating current power lines lose significant energy over long distances, typically 2 to 3% per 1,000 kilometers. Over the distances from Central Sahara to Northern Europe, that loss becomes significant. The solution is high-voltage direct current transmission, HVDC. HVDC lines lose only about 3% per 1,000 kilometers, making very long-distance transmission economically viable for the first time. HVDC technology has advanced dramatically. Individual HVDC cable lengths of over 3,000 kilometers are now either operational or under construction in various parts of the world. Undersea HVDC cables connecting continents are no longer theoretical. The cost remains enormous. A single HVDC cable linking North Africa to Southern Europe via the Mediterranean costs between $1 and $3 billion per link, depending on the route and undersea conditions. A full transmission network connecting multiple Saharan generation sites to European and Middle Eastern grids would require dozens of such links. But the economics are changing. As renewable energy costs fall, the business case for long-distance transmission improves, and several serious projects are now actively under development. The Saharan Solar Megaproject is no longer purely theoretical. Several major projects are actively under construction or in advanced development right now. In Morocco, the Noor complex near the city of Ouarzazate is the largest concentrating solar power plant in the world. Phase 1 opened in 2016. The full complex covers 30 square kilometers and generates enough electricity to power over 1 million homes. Morocco is now exporting clean electricity to Spain via existing undersea cable connections, making it one of the first African nations to become a net energy exporter to Europe. In the United Arab Emirates, the Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Solar Park is on track to become the world's largest single-site solar installation. When complete, it will generate 5,000 megawatts of power. In Saudi Arabia, the NEOM project includes a planned solar and wind energy installation that would make it entirely renewable powered, an entire city run on desert sun and wind. Perhaps most significantly, the XLINKS Morocco UK Power Project, a private initiative planning to connect a massive solar and wind installation in southern Morocco to the United Kingdom via a 3,800-kilometer HVDC undersea cable. the longest power cable ever built. If constructed, it would supply 8% of the UK's electricity from Saharan solar. Construction is targeted to begin in the mid-2020s. The pieces of the Saharan solar future are being assembled, not all at once, but steadily. The physics of Saharan solar are perfect. The technology is ready. The economics are increasingly favorable. The politics are complicated. Most of the Sahara sits within countries that have historically been economically marginalized: Niger, Mali, Chad, Algeria, Libya, Sudan, nations whose governments range from fragile to failed, whose infrastructure is minimal, whose investment climates are challenging. Building a $400 billion energy megaproject requires political stability, rule of law, long-term contract enforcement, and a regulatory environment that international investors can trust. Many Saharan nations currently provide none of these. There is also a deeper concern, one that African scholars and policymakers have raised repeatedly. Who benefits? If Saharan solar is built primarily to export electricity to wealthy European nations, the host countries become energy suppliers without becoming energy secure themselves. The profits flow outward. The infrastructure serves foreign markets. The local population remains without reliable electricity. Over 600 million people in sub-Saharan Africa currently have no access to electricity. If Saharan solar is built at scale and the electricity goes to Europe rather than to African cities, villages, and industries, the moral case becomes deeply uncomfortable. The most credible modern proposals address this directly. They envision a system that electrifies Africa first, providing cheap, abundant clean energy to the continent that generates it, before exporting surplus power to European and Middle Eastern markets. Africa First is not just ethically better, it is economically smarter. A continent of 1.4 billion people with access to cheap electricity is a $1 trillion market for every industry imaginable. There is a counterintuitive environmental concern about covering large parts of the Sahara with solar panels. It might change the weather. The Sahara's climate is not static. Scientists have shown that the desert has cycled between wet and dry periods over geological time, roughly 21,000-year cycles driven by shifts in Earth's orbit. The last green Sahara period ended approximately 5,000 years ago. Research published in scientific journals has modeled what would happen if large areas of the Sahara were covered with solar panels and wind turbines. The results are surprising. Dark solar panels absorb more heat than the pale sand they replace. That increased surface temperature changes air pressure patterns. Changed air pressure patterns alter wind circulation. Altered wind circulation affects moisture transport from the Atlantic into the Sahara. Some models suggest that a large enough installation could trigger increased rainfall in the Sahara, potentially greening portions of the desert, increasing vegetation, further altering the climate in a self-reinforcing cycle. Other models are less optimistic, suggesting the changes could disrupt rainfall patterns in the Sahel region to the south, potentially harming agriculture in countries that depend on reliable monsoon patterns. The scientific consensus is that the effects would need careful modeling and monitoring. A project of this scale would be the largest deliberate intervention in the Earth's climate system in human history. It might make things better. It might introduce unpredictable consequences. The desert is not as passive as it looks. Here is the most important fact about Saharan solar in 2024. It is becoming cheaper than alternatives. In 2021, the Noor Abu Dhabi solar plant in the UAE set a world record, generating electricity at a cost of 1.35 US cents per kilowatt hour. In 2023, a solar auction in Saudi Arabia broke that record again. These are not costs achieved with subsidies. They are the actual unsubsidized cost of generating solar electricity in a desert environment. Lower than coal, lower than natural gas, lower than nuclear, lower than almost any other source of electricity in human history. At these price points, the economics of Saharan solar begin to work, even accounting for the cost of long-distance HVDC transmission. The cost of transmitting electricity 3,000 kilometers via HVDC adds roughly 1 to 2 cents per kilowatt hour to the delivered price. Even with that addition, Saharan solar delivered to European cities can compete with locally generated natural gas electricity, and it gets cheaper every year. The investment case that failed in 2014 because the numbers didn't work is beginning to work now. Not because the idea changed, because the costs fell. Let's be concrete about what a world-scale Saharan solar project would actually require. To generate enough electricity to power the entire world, approximately 580 terawatt-hours per year, you would need roughly 50,000 square kilometers of solar panels in the Central Sahara. That sounds enormous. It is less than 0.6% of the Sahara's total area. The investment required, approximately $5 trillion, deployed over 20 to 30 years. That sounds enormous too. The world currently spends approximately $300 billion per year on renewable energy investment. Scaling that up to address Saharan solar in Africa is an economic challenge, but not an impossible one. The transmission infrastructure, the HVDC cables, the grid connections, the storage systems, would cost perhaps another $2 to $3 trillion. The total, $7 to $8 trillion over 25 years. For energy independence. For zero-carbon electricity. For a power source that will never run out. For comparison, the world spends approximately $5 trillion every year subsidizing fossil fuels. 1 year of fossil fuel subsidies would fund more than half of a Saharan solar system that would never need to be refueled, never emit carbon, and never run out of fuel for as long as the sun shines. The resource exists. The technology works. The economics are approaching viability. What remains is will. The Sahara has been a desert for 5,000 years. For most of those 5,000 years, it has been considered the definition of uselessness. A barrier. A void. A place that civilizations built around, not through. But physics does not care about human perception. Every day, every single day, without fail, the sun rises over the Sahara and delivers more energy to that sand and rock than the entire human civilization consumes. It has been doing this for 5,000 years. It will do it for 5 billion more. The question has never been whether the energy is there. The question has always been whether the human systems, the politics, the finance, the engineering, the international cooperation could be organized well enough to capture it. We are closer to that answer than we have ever been. Morocco is already exporting solar electricity to Spain. The XLINKS cable is being designed. Solar costs have fallen 90% in 15 years. The desert that the ancient world considered an obstacle, that swallowed caravans and killed empires, may yet become the engine of the civilization that comes after this one. Not by being tamed, by finally being understood.